And good morning, wonderful world of the interwebs. You are once again joining me, Eric, your dutiful host here on our little show, The Wandering Pilgrims. This is an early morning broadcast, having a conversation, got a little heated on my wall. It's always funny how text can get you like, clickety clacking like that cat in the GIF, sorry, David Michael Gray. So here's what happens. You got this social trend. You have this what would be quite properly called a meme, not a memetic, as Justin and I have been talking about a lot lately, but a meme. Memes can take many different forms. It can be back in the I think it was the 40s, Uncle Sam wants you. That's a meme. You know, it's a catchphrase to get people on board with something. It's something that spreads. You know, it's something that's in the public consciousness that's spread hand to hand. And there's this there's plenty of memes going around. Some deeper than others, some more involved, some have many layers. And what happens is when someone comes along and shows you the other side of that meme, okay, they're thinking a lot of things are mutually exclusive that are actually unwarranted. Plenty of non sequiturs ensue from that point forward. B, they read more into a perceived stigma than you as a person, what they know about you, what they would assume to be out of your mouth. Benefit of the doubt goes out the window completely at that point. And then C, it doesn't become a game so much of positive affirmations or positive assertions and establishing them and arguing them firmly so much as it becomes about poking holes and that gotcha moment. And that's about the character of the thread that was on my wall very, very early this morning. Was it Wednesday morning, I think it is? Crap, it's December 9th. Autumn has been so warm, it's like it doesn't even feel like it's that close to Christmas. We don't have a tree up yet. So anyway, I want to pull that up. I will pull up the article that I posted and I will read it. And I think that's probably the best way to go. Now, I'm very what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say rigid in the way I read things. I'm not necessarily rigid. I think I always got very high marks in reading comprehension in school. I used to read a lot of poetry all the way back to like first, second grade. I remember There's a Light On in the Attic. Anyone remember that one? I used to love that book. And I've just always been a literary guy, and I get very, very particular when it comes to people's writings, and I hold them to account to the very specific letter of what they're saying, as well as trying to grasp the spirit of their overall message. And one thing I'm very careful not to do is I really, really try not to assume things that might be seemingly implied, but not necessarily implied, which is basically what took place a lot on this thread. And it does a lot with me because I don't feel the need to argue for the other side. But anyway, this is the exact article. It says, dispelling the few extremists. Ever since I lost that tooth, I can't say those words right. I'll try that again. Dispelling the few extremists myth, the Muslim world is overcome with hate. Okay. First, I want to mention what this does not say. This does not say that Muslims are hateful. All Muslims are hateful, or Muslims even tend to be hateful. It doesn't say anything like that. It's a very specific, discrete statement, basically implying that there is a myth out there that the ones causing this trouble are just a group of a few extremists, that are a vast minority. That's very obviously the implication of that part of the headline, dispelling the few extremists myth. They're basically saying that it's a myth, that there's just a few extremists here, that there's something more going on here. The second part, the Muslim world is overcome with hate. What that's saying is, in the Muslim world, not in the Western world. No, I mean maybe subculture pockets, sub pockets in the Western world, where Muslims have their own little subculture there, their own little niche. But what we're not talking about is Islam as we know it currently in the New World. or not even just in the New World, in the Old World, in Europe even. But I'd say even more so in the United States, because Europe is becoming more and more overrun, and you're seeing less and less of a distinction there. So the Muslim world is overcome with hate. We're talking basically about the East, a part of the East specifically that is primarily Muslim. The countries that we're talking about here are nations like Syria, well, not so much Syria, because they're largely secular as far as government goes, but Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan. You know, are any of these nations sounding familiar to you guys? Saudi Arabia, Gaddafi's, whatever. You know, the whole area, what we commonly see as the Muslim world, a place where women are commonly buried up to their necks and stoned to death, a place where hatred is regularly preached, where they teach in schools, and this in Palestine. I knew a Palestinian, I had a friend named Amr, that told me about this. He was an actual Palestinian living over here, and he said in school they taught him that Jews were the product of apes and pigs. They're taught that in school, okay? So the headline, the Muslim world is overcome with hate. I just gave you tons of examples that are really common in the Muslim world. There are some areas that are far more moderate, like Dubai, for example. I could walk around there pretty free as long as I wasn't doing any drugs or anything and exposing myself or touching women. But there's certain things that where I'd get a slap in the wrist here, I'd probably be put to death there, which I'm not going to get into that because, okay, look, every culture has their nuances, and that's not what we mean by overcome with hate. What we mean is that there is a real just ethos about the world that we tend to know of as the Muslim world, where there's a lot of unrest. Now, I know we are all reasonably intelligent people, and we can all recognize that the United States needs to take some responsibility in fomenting this. The United States, I believe very intentionally, very wickedly, has antagonized the Muslim world, and antagonism is really a euphemism of the highest order. We've afflicted them to the utmost for running on 2 decades now, and before us it was the Soviets. I mean, and even then we were still running interference and playing our shadow games with our wars by proxies. I mean, it's a tangled mess, and if anyone has to bear primary responsibility in why things are so messed up there in this particular way, I think the United States really does have the lion's share of the blame there. However, there's a right way to go about owning up to that, and there's a wrong way, and I'll get to that eventually. So I don't see why anyone would have a problem with a headline that is very obviously true. We don't see the Muslim world being largely loving, embracing, and open and multicultural and all of that stuff. It's not just a few extremists. They were dancing in the streets on the Gaza Strip on 9/11, okay? This isn't a few extremists. We're talking about the majority. If not the majority, at least close to half. I mean, I just have a hard time with anyone who wants to insinuate that the majority of Muslims don't hate the United States. I mean, that seems like a level of head buried in the sand that goes beyond reason in my mind. I don't understand how anyone could not see that. So anyway, that's the headline. Dispelling the few extremists myth. The Muslim world is overcome with hate. All right. Let me read the text. And this is by David French, and it is on the website, The National Review, a very conservative but respectable, well-reputed website, news source. Just as well-reputed as, like, reliable as the Huffington Post. I mean, all right. It is simply false to declare that jihadists represent the tiny few extremists who sully the reputation of an otherwise peace-loving and tolerant Muslim faith. In reality, the truth is far more troubling, that jihadists represent the natural and inevitable outgrowth of a faith that is given over to hate on a massive scale, with hundreds of millions of believers holding views that Americans would rightly find revolting. Not all Muslims are hateful, of course, but so many are that it's not remotely surprising that the world is racked by wave after wave of jihadist violence. To understand the Muslim edifice of hate, imagine it as a pyramid, with broadly shared bigotry at the bottom, followed by stair steps of escalating radicalism, culminating in jihadist armies that in some instances represent a greater share of their respective populations than does the active duty military in the United States. The base of the pyramid, the most broadly held hatred in the Islamic world, is anti-Semitism, with staggering numbers of Muslims expressing anti-Jewish views. In 2014, the Anti-Defamation League released the results of polling 53,100 people in 102 countries for evidence of anti-Semitic attitudes and beliefs. The numbers from the majority Muslim world are difficult to believe for those steeped in politically correct rhetoric about Islam. A full 74% of North African and Middle Eastern residents registered anti-Semitic beliefs, including 92% of Iraqis, a whopping 69% of relatively secular Turks, and 74% of Saudis. Now, let me stop right here and say, if this is a surprise to you, come on, man. Come on. The trend toward Muslim anti-Semitism continues even when Muslim nations are far removed from the Arab-Israeli conflict. A solid majority, 61%, of majority Muslim Malays harbor anti-Semitic attitudes, while only 13% of neighboring majority Buddhist Thais are anti-Jewish. The next level of the pyramid is Muslim commitment to deadly Islamic supremacy. Now, this one is more interesting to me because there's a lot of stuff that can fall under the anti-Semitic umbrella, and for an opinionated person such as myself, there are times when maybe some of my views might be characterized as anti-Semitic. I'm not, but I think that for the sake of this article, that they're probably thinking about, oh, it's the Jews' fault, and Jews are less than us, that kind of anti-Semitic, not just the, well, Jews run Hollywood type anti-Semitic. But I think what really matters, opinions are one thing, okay? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you want to say that Christians are evil and they're all going to hell and Allah will punish them someday. Awesome, great, more power to you. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Hell, Christians say the same about Muslims. No problem there. The problem is when, you're like getting to the point where it's like your duty to like make me convert or die, or to inflict recompense upon my culture for our collective sins against you, things like that. So it says we're talking about the violent aspect. The next level of the pyramid is Muslim commitment to deadly Islamic supremacy. In multiple Muslim nations, overwhelming majorities of Muslims support the death penalty for apostasy or blasphemy. Okay. Muhammad was a child rapist who raped his 9-year-old wife. What was it, Khadijah, I believe? Or no, it wasn't Khadijah. It was that other one. Whichever one it was. You know which one I'm talking about. Now, I'm guilty of a capital offense now. By Islam, by Sharia law, the overwhelming majority of Muslims believe should be the law of the land. By that, they believe I should be put to death. Now, Christians who are so audacious as to say that homosexuals ought to be put to death, man, they're ostracized bad. Holy cow, does the internet punish them? And most Christians don't even believe that. There's a very, very small, tiny majority of Christians that read Leviticus in that way. The vast majority of us, myself included, see that as an antiquated lesson that God was trying to teach us. Well, you really want religion? Here you go. That's what it means. How about you take grace instead? But so I don't believe in the death penalty for homosexuals. I think that they're actually, some of them are pretty cool. But what I cannot deny is that that Sharia law demands the death penalty for homosexuality, demands the death penalty for saying anything bad about Muhammad, demands the death penalty for adultery on the woman's side, just on the woman's side. So and this is not a fringe thing, guys. Come on, this is not a fringe thing. You might have Muslims that that you're all buddy with. They are the minority. because they're in the West. The West is vastly minority Muslim. Minority Muslim. You go to where it's majority Muslim, and you're going to find a whole different brand of Islam. That's what we're talking about. That's what invaded my state 10, 15 years ago, well, a little more than 15 years ago, was that different kind of Islam. That Islam that we're talking about coming over here now in the form of 10,000 Syrian refugees. I don't know. Obviously, the Syrians are far more civilized than the Somalians. So anyone who thinks that I'm making a broad sweeping equivocation there is missing the point. What I'm saying is we have a whole different level of culture there. A whole different level of culture there that we have no idea because we've never been exposed to that. The closest thing that we've been exposed to is what I've talked about, the Somalis coming over here. But I have no doubt that the Somalis are far worse. They're not organized. Okay, I'm not worried about Somalians being jihadis. They're just dicks. Okay, they're just general dicks to everyone around them. They're a rock in the boot of all the people working hard to make this community something worth living in. The Syrians, however, have many. I don't even want to call them jihadis because most of them aren't even jihadis. They're mercenaries that just hate America and go where the money is and fight for it. But we have so many of them intermixed with it. I'm getting off the article. I want to finish this article before I start making too many comments. I'm sure you guys are used to that by now. ADHD has its perks. Okay, so now we're talking about the overwhelming majorities of Muslims support the death penalty for apostasy or blasphemy. Collectively, this means that hundreds of millions of men and women support capital punishment for the exercise of basic human rights of freedom of expression and free exercise of religion. Now, there's a chart here. I'll read some of it out to you, but it says death penalty for leaving Islam among Muslims who say Sharia should be the law of the land, percent who favor the death penalty for converts, meaning converting away from Islam. Percent who favor the death penalty for converts. Bosnia Herzegovina 15%, Russia 15%, Kosovo 11%, Albania 8%. Tajikistan, well, I'll just regionally, Central Asia is probably, those ones are really diverse. Tajikistan is 22%, Turkey 17%, Kyrgyzstan, I don't know how to pronounce that one, 14%, Kazakhstan 4%, Malaysia 62%, Thailand, wow, Malaysia doesn't like us. Thailand 27%, Indonesia 18%. Ooh, now we're getting to the place where we're talking about. Okay, where we're talking about here? The Middle East, Afghanistan, 79%. Pakistan, 76%. Bangladesh, 44%. How about the North Africa, Middle East part? Egypt, 86 freaking percent think that if you're let's back up a bit. What is kufar? What is kufar? All right. So basic Islamic theology is that we were actually all Muslim. We were all created Muslim. That Adam made a deal with God in the beginning and broke that deal. And we do the same thing following our Father. And so we are actually all who are not born Muslim. We are all born kufar, which is the apostate, the enemy of the Islamic faith. And so that is the jihadis' justification for killing the kufar at will, is that we've all apostatized from birth. So just want to throw that in there. But yeah, Middle East, North Africa, 86% Egypt, 82% in Jordan, Palestinian territory, 66%. Lebanon's supposed to be our friend. Lebanon's supposed to be our buddy. 46% of them. 46% of them think that us apostates should be dead. Iraq. Aren't they so grateful for the freedom that we brought them? Well, that and then the death and destruction. Well, I guess 42% of them don't like us. And Tunisia, who cares about them? 29%. So yeah, Middle East and South Asia, Southeast Asia, those are really troubling areas. And this is the basic region of which Syria borders. And there's been bleed through a lot of, since all of this conflict started, you know, between the past 10 and 15 years, there's been a lot of border hopping, a lot of stuff going on. Because like I said, the mercenaries are following the money, you know, and well, let me just get back to the article. I'm a little more than halfway through it, so don't worry, we're going to get through this morning. Moving beyond Islamic supremacy to the next step of the pyramid, enormous numbers of Muslims are terrorist sympathizers. Oh, this is well known. I remember having conversations with people I worked with at the Dingley Press, where they didn't think Osama bin Laden was that bad of a guy. Shit you not, here in the United States of frickin' America, had dudes, you know, that had been brought over here on Uncle Sam's bill, given a house, given a car, given a job, and taught skills, and saying that, you know, Osama bin Laden was just doing what he thought he should, and it's like, okay. Moving beyond Islamic supremacy to the next step of the pyramid, enormous numbers of Muslims are terrorist sympathizers. It's still stunning to see how popular Osama bin Laden was early last decade, and even as his popularity plunged as he grew weaker and more isolated, his public approval remained disturbingly high. Well, let's check out this chart here. Well, the trend. Oh, it's just that, yeah, I can't really characterize. There's too many numbers for me to put in the video. Well, actually, I could pull it up over here and screen share. Why didn't I think of doing that before? Because I'm a retard. No, not really. I have better self-esteem than that. Where did I post that at? That was on my wall. Okay. This was a total last-minute post, because I could see I was getting irritated at Matthew Tanous kept mischaracterizing my statements very, very badly, and to the point of putting words in my mouth, where he was saying that if I think anyone is of a like race of my enemies, then I shouldn't let them in. It's like, what the hell, dude? Where did you get that? You know, tell the truth here. But where is that? Oh yeah, slay the believer wherever he's born. Yeah, they did see that. Okay. No, come on. This thing that sucks about working two computers at once. Get confused. We now pause for a word from our announcers, our sponsors. See what a crappy radio broadcaster I'd be. Come on, I just had it. Okay. Dispelling the few extremist myth. The 55 reply sub-thread. All right, we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. I might as well share my screen while I'm pulling it up. Screen share, where are you? Mr. Screen share, there you are. I want the National Review. All right. Yeah, you see the article? I hope that's coming through. Let me scroll down a bit here. That's that chart that I was telling you about before, where I read it out to you. The death penalty for leaving Islam. Among Muslims say that it should be Sharia should be the law of the land, percent who favor the death penalty for converts. Go a little further down to this next one. This is the chart that I was just talking about. Confidence in Osama bin Laden. And as you can see, early on, there's some places where he wasn't a majority support. Hey, at least Turkey still likes us. But Jordan, who's supposed to be kind of our friends, Lebanon, they're supposed to be really our friends, like 90%. Holy cow. And well, Nigeria, that's no surprise, but Pakistan, I mean, they were our allies in the whole war on terror. But you can see how they declined bit by bit. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't agree with the guy. Maybe they're just thinking, oh man, it was kind of cool what he did, but sure kind of sucks that we got all these bombs raining down on our heads now. I'll leave the screen share up so I don't have to just go back and forth because I see we got another chart here. But what about ISIS, the world's most savage and deadly terror organization that we created? The latest polling data shows that whilst a majority of Muslims reject ISIS, extrapolating from the populations of polled countries alone shows that roughly 50 million people express sympathy for a terrorist army that burns prisoners alive, throws gay men from buildings, and beheads political opponents. In Pakistan, a horrifying 72% couldn't bring themselves to express an unfavorable view of ISIS. Oh, but these are just a few, just a tiny, tiny fringe of radical extremists right here, right? See, we don't even have to say that it's not the majority. I mean, that it's not the minority. I mean, it could be just, if it's as few as a quarter of all Muslims, that's huge. Is there between 1 and 2 billion Muslims in the world? A quarter of them are radical and think that the West is the great Satan and thinks we should die and all of that. I mean, really, we're really trying to gloss this over here. We're in the attempt to give people a ridiculous level of benefit of the doubt, we're forsaking what we already know to be true. So let's look at this chart. Views of ISIS overwhelmingly negative. Do you have a blank opinion of the Islamic militant group in Iraq and Syria known as ISIS? Holy cow. Well, Lebanon doesn't like them. Israel don't like them, of course. Jordan, blah, 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 go down. Again, with Pakistan, I thought they were supposed to be our friends. You know, Pakistan, they can't bring themselves to really say they hate ISIS. I mean, we're talking about a roving band of thugs that are burning villages. They're putting people to death liberally, not even for like egregious offenses like homosexuality, but just for simply not being Muslim. I mean, seriously, I hope that was presented to everybody. Oh, it wasn't presented to everybody. It was just presented to anyone else who might be here. That must have been confusing for you guys listening in or watching. All right, sorry about that. Let me scroll up so you can see that chart again. That's the one that I was just commenting on right there. Still learning the Google Hangouts thing, but I'll get it one of these days. And that's the one I was just talking about there. Wait, don't go yet. Yeah, stop it. Spammers. Anyway, see? And let's be clear here. What I am not saying. Okay, now I said in the beginning something about majority of Muslims. I did not say that the majority of Muslims are terrorists. I challenge anyone to find anywhere where I ever said that. I did not say that the majority of Muslims support terrorism. Though I would say it might be up for debate whether the majority of Muslims support terrorists. If you think about it, there is a real significant distinction between the two, between supporting terrorism and supporting terrorists. A lot of people support Jesse Jackson. They just don't support what he does, you know? So I haven't said that all Muslims are bad. I haven't said that there should be a religious test for coming into this nation. I think Donald Trump is a moron for saying that. Well, either a moron or a genius. I personally don't think he really believes that himself. I think he's just saying whatever he thinks it takes to get into the office, which is pretty much what he promised to do like 10, 15 years ago anyway. But I digress. So there's all kinds of things that I haven't said, that just because I have something that presents the other side of Islam that nobody wants to be presenting nowadays. Everyone wants to try to present this kinder, gentler Islam, and they don't want to see both sides of the coin. So when someone comes along and shows them the other side, they lump in all kinds of bigoted bullshit that has nothing to do with anything that I freaking said. All right? And if anyone wants to check it out, you go ahead and look on my wall. Like I said, the article is Dispelling the Few Extremist Myth, How the Muslim World is Overcome with Hate. So yeah, check that out on my wall, and you can see how the thread went. Yeah, I get a little reactionary in text sometimes, but it's all good. I chill out, and you can tell I'm obviously not too frazzled. But so after the unfavorable view of ISIS, let's keep on reading. But sympathy for terror is different from active support, and here's where the numbers are difficult to pin down. I know of no reliable database that shows how many Muslims give to jihadist charities, spread jihadist propaganda on social media, support radical preachers, or otherwise take concrete actions to advance the terrorist cause. We do know, for example, that anti-Israel terrorism is so popular in Saudi Arabia that a telethon once raised $100 million to support the 2002 Intifada. A few extremists, just a fringe segment of these people on a public broadcast televised telethon raise $100 million. You can't raise $100 million freaking dollars for cancer these days. They're raising $100 million to send kids with bombs strapped to their chests into malls and shopping centers and restaurants in Israel. Come on, guys. Are you going to peel the scales off your eyes or what? That shows of support, including this charming scene. Oh, boy. A 6-year-old boy with a plastic gun slung over his shoulder and fake explosives strapped around his waist walked into a donation center and made a symbolic donation of plastic explosives, according to Al Watan Daily. This is like being on CBS here in the United States. This is what happens on their version of NBC, on their version of ABC. They have telethons to have to fund suicide bombers to kill women and children, civilians in Israel, and one of the ways that they drum up support for is by dressing up their little jihadi in their little Halloween blow me up costume, and they do this on TV, and oh, isn't it so cute? And oh yes, hate Israel, yes, oh, may the pigs die, and what the hell? This is not a fringe thing. This was televised, guys. And it was so popular, it raised $100 million. But I must hate Muslims to just be pointing out facts. Very relevant facts, germane to the issue in the extreme. No, I'm not saying that all Syrians are like this, okay? Stop thinking that I'm saying that all Syrians are bad. Probably even the majority of Syrians are good people. They were very pro-West the last I knew. They were very into America. I would even go so far as to say probably a good solid 60 to 70% of Syrians could probably, through time, through the right roadmap, assimilate into Western culture rather seamlessly. Okay, not en masse, not 10,000 at a time. It's not how that works. Okay, if you want to talk about families sponsoring other families and showing them the ropes and stuff like that, hey, that's a great thing. You want to start shuffling them into ghettos like they did with the Somalians, you're just going to have another friggin' fiasco on your hands. It's the story of history. It happens every time. It doesn't have to be Syrians. It doesn't have to be Somalians. It could be Jews. It could be the Japanese. It could be the blacks after the Civil War shuffled into ghettos. Look, you're going to take a whole segment of disenfranchised people who have been displaced out of their homeland, exposed to a war-torn countryside and fear for their lives for who knows how long now, and just plop them down en masse in these various communities in the United States where feelings are already running high against Islam, and feelings amidst Islam is already running high against the West. You guys are not being rational about this in your attempt to be so noble and to have your ideology flesh itself out in such a way as to tangibly love the nations of the world. I like taking in strays. You know, I've always been one to take in pets, take in stray cats or whatever. But I got kids, I got a family, and if some mangy old dog comes around, I might be able to bring him to the animal shelter or something like that, but I can't just bring him into my household. I can't do that. I'm not saying that it's the dog's fault that it's in the state that it's in. And the dog might be the best dog in the world, but I can't take that chance. I can't take that chance right yet Maybe, just maybe if the dog was especially well, but certainly not 10 dogs. Certainly not 10,000. So, and no, before you guys start pulling the asshole card, I'm not calling Syrians dogs. Okay, it's an analogy. And I'm just, Matthew, if you're watching this, your rhetoric was exceptionally dishonest. Okay, all of the things, all the ways that you characterize my words, if you would have given me the benefit of the doubt, you would have very easily seen what I was trying to say. But you were stuck so hard on your narrative that you threw my character under the bus, and that's kind of hurtful. And I'd really like you to examine your attitude and your words in that. You know, the only reason why I said that I thought you weren't a Christian is because I haven't really heard you talk about Christian issues that much, except for to be very critical of Christians. So, you know, I'm not saying it's wrong to be critical of Christians. I thought it was, you know, that you had said that you weren't. So anyway, simple mistake. My apologies. So anyway, yeah, that little cute little scene with baby Jihadi. Good little Muhammad. It is from this fertile soil that jihadists grow, and here the numbers decisively belie the few extremists' rhetoric. In Iran alone, the Revolutionary Guard represents a proportionate share of the population similar to the combined strength of active duty Army and Marines here in the United States. Let me read that again. In Iran alone, the Revolutionary Guard represents a proportionate share of the population similar to the combined strength of the active duty Army and Marines here in the United States. The United States, which has the biggest army in the freaking world, not population wise. I believe that dubious honor goes to China. But we have the greatest military might on the face of this earth, a country of a population of 300 million. I mean, what's Iran, like maybe 10 million, 20 million? I don't know. I haven't seen their population stats, but suffice it to say they are like that compared to the United States. So, I mean, and the Revolutionary Guard is extremist Islam. They are very much extremist Islam. I don't think anyone in the know would argue that. I would hope not anyway. In Iran alone, the Revolutionary Guard represents a proportionate share of the population similar to the combined strength of the active duty Army and Marines here in the United States. Between Boko Haram and the Al-Nusra Front, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Yemeni militias, Libyan militias, and many others, the number of active jihadist numbers. This is not funny, guys. Stop laughing. The number of active jihadist numbers and the number of active jihadists numbers in the hundreds of thousands. Some estimates indicate that 100,000 are fighting in Syria alone. 100,000. I mean, that is such a huge number. 100,000 active jihadis in Syria alone. Now, you guys can post your links of exposing the myth of the no orphans and widows. There's both and here, okay? There are orphans and widows coming out. Obviously, you guys don't know much about Vietnam or the Korean War or anything like that, or those kind of tactics, or what's been going on in that whole region. I mean, this is what happened when Israel was established in the 40s. All the Palestinians streamed in there. You know, they had lived in peace with one another for centuries up until then. I mean, relative peace. I mean, it's never really been that peaceful, but it kind of got real in the 40s. I mean, I don't know what you guys want to hear. I don't know what you're trying to say. I mean, I don't think now is the right time to bring in 10,000 refugees. I think Europe is having a hard enough time dealing with it, and they are far more cosmopolitan than us. They're far more accepting to different cultures than we are. You look across the United States and you see a lot of diversity. Okay, you see more diversity in this one nation, which is actually really more like 50 nations, than you would see in any other one nation on the face of this earth. However, what you see is niches. Okay, people don't like outsiders here. I mean, maybe on the left coast they tend to. I mean, I live in New England, so we are particularly closed to outsiders. Not to the point of being xenophobic, but to the point where we have our way, and if you come here and try to change the way we do things, you're going to be ostracized. We're not going to put up with you. You know, we have issues with the massholes coming up here from Massachusetts. You know, they come up to Maine to get away to vacation, and then they come up here and try to make Maine like Massachusetts. Like, no, we don't want to be like you. There's a reason you're trying to get away from your own state. Same thing with the Somalians. You know, they come over here. They've been pushing hard. Well, past 5-6 years or so, the natives here have been pushing back. I think probably in 10-20 years, the Somalians will be a good part of this community. They will have integrated nicely. We will have sown our wild oats and gotten over our differences and found a way to live in peace together. But we're not there yet, and we're certainly not ready to take on a huge more of a load. Things are already tense here. Things are already tense all across this nation. We are struggling enough as it is to deal with the culture clash between the East and the West. And we're doing all right. Okay, we're doing all right. There's not a bunch of violence against Muslims up here. There's not a bunch of violence against Somalians. In fact, if anything, I would say the violence of Somalians against the locals here is probably 2-to-1. You know, and that's being conservative. So we're pretty nice, and we're trying to figure this stuff out. That being said, come on. How much do you expect of a people? They're talking about a few thousand, or no, I think it was 1,000 coming to Portland, Maine. Let me tell you right now is not the time for that. Now is not the time for that. And the United States is not the only nation in the world. You know, I mean, I don't know what more to say about it. We take in more refugees than probably any other nation in the world, and we treat them better. We treat them like kings. You set them up with their own place to live. I mean, for many of these refugees, this is the first time they've ever owned their own property. You know, this is the first time, and by property, I don't mean land. I mean just like having possessions. You know, for a lot of them, this is the first time they've had a car that the government gave it to them from you know, us working and paying our taxes. How much do you expect? So this bullshit narrative about how love your enemy except for when it doesn't suit you. No, we're loving the fuck out of our enemy to the biggest degree that we can. Could we love them more? Okay, maybe not to the biggest degree we can, but far more than is reasonably expected of us. And I'm talking about the American individual, not the asshole government. Look, it's no secret that the United States foreign policy created this issue. It was going to happen one way or the other. This has been. I mean, I don't know if you want to just stop at Karl Rove, if you want to go all the way back to Kissinger, but this has been the plan all along, to do our march across the Middle East, and now we're reaping what we have sown. But when I say we, I say we only because I'm forced to identify with this government. They don't represent me. They don't represent us. They feed us a line of bull to try to get us to throw our law in with them. But ultimately speaking, if this government truly represented us, we wouldn't be fighting any wars anywhere right now. Not at all. Nowhere. We wouldn't be in the Middle East. Let them deal with their friggin' shit. You know, as far as the oil, we have plenty of our own oil if we quit selling it overseas. You know, it's that musical chairs game with the friggin' petrodollar. You know, they prop up the economy with getting all of these other nations' commodities tied up in the United States dollar. And it's like it's this friggin' Ponzi scheme, you know, that the wealthiest people came up with decades ago in this nation. They're running the nation now, to where you make the rest of the world dependent on the dollar. You make the rest of the world dependent on the United States military. You make the rest of the world dependent on our economy, and we have these problems. So yeah, it sucks. These are some real problems. They need real solutions. But sending 10,000 Syrian refugees here and shuffling them into pocket communities it's a recipe for disaster. And if you don't, I mean, it's not possible to appropriately vet that number of people. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. So, and if you don't think that ISIS is, or not, I don't even want to call them ISIS. If you don't think that there's plenty of extremists trying to sneak in that are getting through the vetting process, then you're not living in the real world. I don't believe in closed borders. Here's a few. Okay, let me get proactive on this for a second. For those of you who think that I'm just a chorus of no here, I mentioned before, I think the government should start a sponsorship program where if you and your family are well off enough that you would like to sponsor a Syrian family, you know, like have them come live in your home for a year, help them learn to speak English, bring them to their appointments, show them how to live in this culture, you know, teach them the customs and all that stuff, and naturalize them that way. If you want to talk about good upstanding citizens taking sponsorship programs and taking in refugees that way, that's how you show the love of Christ conscientiously without putting your homeland at risk. That is a reasonable risk to take because you're surrounded at that point. You have the community, peer pressure. Back to memetics. Peer pressure is a powerful thing. You immerse them in that environment, there is the love of Christ. Boom, you got it. And that's how you make disciples out of Islam. No, you don't have to convert them. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you are truly being all the Christian that you ought to be, I am convinced in my mind that they will be so overwhelmed by the love that you show them that will be the greatest argument in favor of Christianity. Not the convert or die. The convert or not, I'm still gonna love you. But so yeah, I'm not saying keep them out. I'm saying don't import 10,000 refugees and shuffle them in just like you did with the Somalians, because that's exactly what they plan on doing. If you've looked at the plan, that's exactly what they plan on doing. They're making little niches in all of these different communities, like they're embedding them. They're not spreading them out. They're not mixing them amidst the communities. They're putting them all together in these various disparate communities across the nation. And we all know how that worked out in Dearborn. So yeah, that kind of sucks. So that's one thing, you know, a sponsorship program. Also, I think that any Syrian that finds their way here can ask for political asylum, because you gotta understand what's going on is they're going to the United States Embassy and begging for political asylum, and then we're shipping them over here, getting, you know, with full benefits and everything. So that's I think they got places closer to them that can help them out. If they can find the means, if they can finagle it some way to get someone. I mean, look, there's GoFundMe crap up online. If people feel that passionately about the Syrian refugees, then put the damn money where your mouth is. Help them out yourself. Quit twisting everyone else's arm. It's not altruistic to take from someone else just to give to someone else. You got to understand, Robin Hood didn't take from people, he took from the government. You know, the same. Anyway, other solutions. Well, okay, let them come here. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, if they find their own way here, I hate the fact that we turn away the Cubans that come ashore. I mean, I don't think that border should be closed down. I think that we should have some military on the Mexican border just to freaking wipe out the drug cartels that are dominating these border towns. That's not an issue of closed borders. That's an issue of an invading military force taking over a small geographic area. But we're not going to get into that side issue. I don't believe in closed borders. I don't believe that the United States is so small that we can't take all the refugees in the world, but in the right way. We've struggled very hard to get the nation that we have today, and we're at a very dangerous time in our history. We've been living off the coattails of previous generations for far too long now, and we are reaping the rewards of our laziness. All of the great geniuses of our lineage have gifted us with the greatest innovations that the human civilization has to offer, and we have just taken that, and rather than running with it, we've sat on our butt and enjoyed it. And while innovation is still taking place in the world today, I mean, hell, they built the atomic bomb with a computer bigger than this house, that had less computing power than your average pocket calculator. I think that's a level above what we're used to these days. Things like that. I think of Isaac Newton deriving calculus. Think of Einstein just thinking with his thoughts all by himself in his patent office, coming up with relativity. We don't have innovation like that anymore, and not as much. What we have is the interconnectivity of the internet, which is creating a super brain amidst this global culture. And so, yes, we have bigger ideas, but it's not so much individual based, it's more collectivist these days. I think I'm going down a rabbit trail here. All I'm saying is that in today's world, we're facing a unique set of circumstances that necessitate a very comprehensive approach to solving the problems that face us, that confront us. You can't just go with throwing money at an issue. You can't just say, oh, we're just going to bring them all over here. You got to be smart about this stuff, and you got to know the culture for what it is. Now, one thing I probably ought to touch upon before I go too much further. Posting passages from the Quran and characterizing Islam. Okay. There are several things that make up a religion. Primary among them, if not the primary thing, is its history, its inception. A religion is defined, if it makes any transcendent claims anyway, if it makes any claim to ultimate truth, if it claims any transcendency and authority, then it must be right from start to finish. You can't pick and choose. It can't evolve. It must be perfect. Okay? Take Christianity, for example. Nobody's claiming that there's going to come a better leader than Christ. Nobody's claiming that, our understanding might evolve in some ways, but basically nobody's trying to change Christ's words. What Christ said, he meant. We are trying to change Muhammad's words, though, because essential to the Muslim faith, essential to Islam, which means the submission, by the way, or to submit. Essential to this religion is following the person of Muhammad. Now, I've posted plenty of videos and articles of ex-Muslims themselves saying these things. So this isn't Christian propaganda. This isn't Western propaganda. These are Eastern Muslims who themselves have informed me and seek to inform all of us on this issue. Okay? Essential to Islam is the idea that you are following in Muhammad's footsteps, that he is your example, that he is your guide, that he is your mentor, you are his disciple, and you approve of everything that Muhammad did. This is very, very, very key. You approve of everything that Muhammad did. You might say to me, well, there's some Muslims who don't approve of everything that Muhammad did. Well, then they're not Muslims. They're Muslims in name only, I guess. But the claim is that Muhammad was the prophet of Allah and that he's beyond reproach. There's really no disputing that. And Muhammad did some really, really wretched things. A lot of people will talk about how he grew, as his life went on. Well, of course he grew. It's not like he was actually getting something from God. I mean, I don't know if he was making it up or if he was channeling demons or what. Maybe he was just eating some funky cactus buds out in the desert there. All I know is that Muhammad, when he wrote the surahs, wrote a lot of really blasphemous things about the Bible, the way he presented a lot of the biblical narratives with his own little spin on it. It was pretty blasphemous at some points. But regardless of whether he grew later in life and said that religion should be without compulsion or whatnot, we're talking about a guy who's claiming to get a revelation from God through the agency of Gabriel the Archangel and recording this to be binding for all men of all time, that the Quran is not a book written by man, nor is a thing that has come into existence, but that the Quran is something that has always existed, that is eternal, and that has been given as a gift unto man. Now this is just the foundation of the faith here. Outside of this, you can have an Islamic tradition, which I'm thinking that people need to find a way to use different words because euphemisms are killing us. You can't keep calling yourself a Muslim if you're not a Muslim because you're just confusing the issue, and you're really not doing us any favors, especially when the people who are true to their founding documents are zealots who are bloodthirsty. So I will say this. Most Muslims do want peace. What kind of peace do they want is the question. But most Muslims, they don't want war. But anyway, so to the history of what Muhammad did, the prophet of God, of whom if you say what I'm about to say, if you say anything bad about him, then you are under fatwa. You are to be put to death. Now, as a slight little preface, I want to add that Cat Stevens shocked the world. I can't remember who it was that said something negative about Muhammad, but when Cat Stevens converted to Islam and started calling himself Yusuf Islam, I believe it was. I could be wrong with that, but I think that's what it was. When he converted, he was asked this question, this guy who would blaspheme Muhammad. He's like, Sharia law says that he should be put to death. Do you agree with that? And I mean, he elaborated a bit, but ultimately what it came down to is, yeah, that's what Quran says. So that's what must happen. And he wasn't saying that he was going to do it himself or anything, hold the blade or whatever, but he was affirming that it was appropriate. This was a time when the psyops hadn't been ratcheted up to the level that they are today. Students of history ought to take note. Vietnam is especially relevant here because the tactics of the Viet Cong were very, very clever. They would demoralize their opponents by joining them. And I hate it when the laptop does that. My screen just died. They would demoralize the enemy by joining them. They would join the enemy cause, and through bad morale, through questioning certain dogmas, through just the well-placed word here or there, they would destroy morale of the enemy army. And nowadays, what you see, there are a lot of people in the world who call themselves Muslims, who are good people, who are moral people, who are, what was the dude's name? They're Emmet, I believe his name was Emmet from the final battle in the Chronicles of Narnia. He is the type of which I speak. He is the template of these people of to whom I refer. There's a huge number of people in this world who, be it by their culture, by virtue of their birth, their geographical location, or maybe just it's the course of their life and they just happen to be there for right now. They call themselves Muslims, but if they knew the full story, they never would. And for those people, my gripe is not with you. And I'm not referring to you. I'm not addressing you. Problem is you're part of the problem. I will say that. You are part of the problem. By embracing a watered-down version of this wicked faith, all you're doing is blurring the lines. It's so much easier when you have a clear-cut bad guy. You are my biggest burden when it comes to this issue. I'm speaking directly to moderate Muslims right now. You are the biggest thorn in my side. Not because I want you to be extremists. No, of course not. What you're doing is legitimizing an illegitimate historical faith. You're taking the faith of a bloodthirsty child rapist, sadist. I mean, I can't say enough bad things about Muhammad. You're taking the religion of a man who sought to conquer the world, and you're owning it for yourself, but supposedly taking it back. I guess maybe you could say redeeming it by embracing a more peace-loving, moderate version of it that takes all of the good but leaves the bad. But in effect, what you do is you make it easy for these jihadists to fly under the radar, because then they can pretend to be you. You see the problem? You see why guys like Matthew Tanous get so mad at me? Because you got them fooled. You got them fooled because you're fooled into thinking that you can actually follow Muhammad and be a good person. You don't. It's out of ignorance, and there's no hatred in my heart for these people. Really, you have a hard time finding hatred in my heart in general. So anyone who reads that, I'm a straight talking, blunt person, but I'm not hateful or malicious. I just don't do political correct and euphemism and all of that bullshit. I like to cut through the bullshit and see what it is. So. What was it when Muhammad was when he had come back to Mecca? I think it was. You story. You history buffs can correct me if I totally botched this one. I'm okay with that. Been years and years and years since I read this stuff. But come back to Mecca, and he had his invading force, and basically said that, you know, if the residents of Mecca would convert to Islam, that he'd let him off the hook. Well, they converted, and he killed half of them. So you get, I know it's not Khadijah. Is it Aisha? Is that the one? Well, he married a 9-year-old and consummated it. I think she was 7 when she was actually betrothed to him. But consummated a marriage with a 9-year-old. Founder of the faith. I don't know how anyone in their right mind could possibly even think of being associated with that. This is how insane the PC madness has gotten. If there was some religious leader nowadays, I mean, think about all those Catholic priests that molested those boys. If the Catholic Church did anything but in the strongest terms condemn the actions of those priests, who would let them off the freaking hook? Okay, but we're trying to be okay with the founder of a faith that raped a 9-year-old girl. You guys don't have a problem with this. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Seriously. If this was a Christian thing, we'd be done. We'd be done. What is it? Are you scared of getting bombed? Is that what it is? Are you scared of jihad? Are you scared of being labeled anti-Muslim? I mean, one of the most laughable things is, oh, you're a racist. You're against Muslims. You're a racist. Really? Muslims a race? Black, white, yellow, orange. I've seen Muslims of all those colors. Didn't realize they were a race. But see, that's how ridiculous it's gotten. You can't even criticize Islam without being called a racist. What's going on here, guys? Nobody's hating on Muslims, okay? Mind you, nobody's hating on Muslims. We're trying to cut through some bullshit. We're trying to characterize things properly. Nobody's perfect, and I'm trying to show you how very imperfect the moderates are. Because the only reason I'm addressing this right now is because it's what came up in that thread that started this whole this whole broadcast. And It has nothing to do with the article, dispelling the few extremists myth. The whole article was about the fact that we're not, when we're talking about radical Islam, we're not talking about just a few extremists. We're talking about a big chunk, big freaking chunk. What was that? Over 100,000 in Syria alone. 100,000 in Syria alone. Few extremists, 100,000 in Syria alone. A few extremists, 100,000 in Syria alone. Did I post a hateful article? If you think so, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Did I say anything hateful towards Muslims? If you think so, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Do I hate Muslims? If you think so, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Are Muslims a threat to the rest of the world right now? Is the Islamic faith, is the Muslim faith a clear and present danger to the world at large today in its current most popular form? If you don't see that, you're not just drinking the Kool-Aid, you're done drunk and passed out. Dude, guys, come on, work with me here. Where even Pope Benedict, what was that thing he got so much flack for? What is it about your culture that produces so much violence? I mean, really, the laughable comparison to Christianity, oh, crusades, which were a response to Moorish incursions that happened for decades, if not centuries before. I mean, come on, guys, are you not allowed to defend yourself? I mean, I don't see anywhere close to the scale of Christian violence that I see Muslim violence, and even the Christian violence was highly political. And to be fair, a lot of the Muslim violence is kind of political these days. But you kind of have to have like a centralized authority to really be seen to be political. And it's like, we can kill ISIS and another one's going to pop up. I mean, we already killed Al-Qaeda, I guess, mainly. Does anyone even really know what happened to Al-Qaeda? I mean, I guess they're kind of like the Michael Bolton of terrorists or terrorist groups. I mean, they were like really big for a while there. They're like, everyone's eyes were all on them, whether they wanted to look at them or not, because it's like a head rolling down the road, quite literally. And then it's just one day, where'd he go? Who knows? Who cares? At least he's gone. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to remember that one. Al-Qaeda is the Michael Bolton of terrorist groups. So, I mean, you can crush ISIS. What is it about this culture that keeps producing these groups? Well, you might say United States. Valid point. What is it that makes it so easy for the United States to produce these groups? I mean, we tried doing that in Vietnam. We tried doing that in Korea. It didn't quite work out so well. It's working famously in the Middle East. We do stir things up where they're stir-upable, you know? What is it about the Muslim culture that makes it so easy to incite them to violence? You know, I mean, I don't think that a lot of you are capable of having an honest dialogue about this, because you're too brainwashed. The social justice warrior thing goes on both sides. You know, there's conservative social justice warriors too. There's conservative PC warriors. There's a whole conservative brand of this, a whole right-wing brand of this, a whole libertarian brand of this. And it's just as insidious. It's just as insidious. You can't say that a particular religion is better than the other, or you can't say that a particular group of people exhibits a certain set of negative traits. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can extrapolate trends. You can look at statistics. Why did we take this in math class if we can't apply it to the real world? Just because we don't like what it says about a certain demographic of people, just because we don't like that a certain demographic of people can have common characteristics like that, just because we don't like those facts doesn't mean that they're not true. And chew this for a second, okay? Chew this fact. How can we have demographics if there aren't groups of people that have sets of commonalities in the first place? That's the whole nature of a demographic. There is nothing wrong with seeing a common set of traits amidst a certain people. I guess really the only way we're going to get through this is or get over this is when people stop caring what other people say about them. Now, I could lie to you and tell you that I don't care what people say about me. I'm actually a really sensitive person, a lot more so than I come off. And I take a lot of things to heart. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I get so up in arms online sometimes, just because sometimes the things that people say about me, especially people who should know me better than that, it does get hurtful. You know, it does get hurtful. It's just like, come on. Maybe I'm clumsy with my words. I don't think so. I think maybe a lot of times people are trying to read into them intentionally. But, you know, the only way that we're going to deal with this in a productive manner is if we can be okay with saying things like, okay, a majority of Muslims in the world are incompatible with Western culture. Now, you can disagree with it. Don't disagree with my rational ability to arrive at that conclusion. That doesn't mean that I've gone off the deep end. It means that I have a difference of opinion if you disagree with me. It doesn't mean that I hate Muslims. It means that the facts at hand as I see them lead me to deduce this conclusion. It's as simple as that. So I look forward to a day with no borders. I look forward to a day where all this war ceases and the United States gets their friggin' military the hell out of everyone else's country. I personally am of the opinion that we shouldn't have any military bases anywhere else in the world but on our own soil. I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't even have a standing army. I don't believe in standing armies. I don't believe in a standing police force. I'm a libertarian to the point of just about being an anarchist. I don't really see a meaningful distinction between me and the moniker of anarchist, other than I'm a bit more nuanced than that broad sweeping label. However, I'm a realist. You know, there's pragmatic reality, and taking an honest view at the Muslim faith, there is a poison in that faith. And until we sort that poison out, we need to treat it like all poisonous vipers. I'm not saying kill all the snakes. No, I'm not saying all Muslims are snakes either. Ah, man, you guys have got me so on guard with that bullshit. It's like you're always waiting to catch me in something. You know, I'm not saying kill all the snakes. What I'm saying is if you're going to handle a viper, keep its fangs away from your flesh. Okay? If we're going to help Syria, the first way to help Syria is to stop fucking bombing them. Radical idea, huh? Leave them alone, okay? I don't know if you guys, I don't know and I don't care, okay? But here's the thing. The only reason we're trying to topple Assad is because he threatens the petrodollar. Okay, and it's a valid concern, a valid economic concern. If you're looking to take care of the United States economic interests at all costs, then we almost kind of have to do something about Syria and Iran, because they are the ones who threaten the petrodollar the most, and that's why they are in our crosshairs. And it's in my opinion immoral. We are sacrificing an entire region for the sake of our own prosperity. An entire region for the sake of our own prosperity. Now, if the petrodollar collapses, chances are the United States will reach third world status in very short order. So it's not like people are just going to war just to wax their pockets. The fact is this really is important for the world to keep trading in the dollar. If the dollar loses its status as the world currency, we're in more trouble than we've ever been before in the entire history of this nation. That's worse than the Great Depression. So maybe it'd be a good thing for us. Maybe it would get us back to our manufacturing roots, our innovative roots or whatnot. But in any case, one way or the other, that's what we're doing. We're driving. We're driving it home. We're gonna plow that whole piece of land over eventually, and it's all in the interest of our own economy. So long as we're doing that, we're going to be producing extremism. So long as we're doing that, we're going to be bringing out the worst in the Muslim world. and there's plenty of bad to be brought out there. And that's all I'm saying. So maybe I need a follow-up to this later on today, give you guys a chance to watch this, to give it a bit of a review, to see if that clarifies any of our discussion on the thread on my wall, mainly between myself, Justin Fowler, and Matthew Tanous. I think I'm saying his name right. Tanous. I used to say Tanous. I think I'd rather say tenuous. That would make it more interesting, but I think I'm just going to say Tanous. You know what? I'm a rebel. I'm going to say tenuous. You're Matthew Tanous from now on, because it's just so tenuous. Anyway, so I'm not mad at you, Matthew, and I hope you're not mad at me, but that's a way to push my buttons when you start putting words in my mouth and you start mischaracterizing my words. You know, that's the easiest way to really insult me, because it's like if you put a little effort into it, you can figure out what I'm really saying, not what I'm not saying. Okay. And that goes 10 times for you, Justin. Come on, smarten up, dude. You know better. Anyway, so this has been the most recent broadcast of the Wandering Pilgrims. I hope it didn't suck too much, because, you know, sucking always sucks. But, you know, as usual, I hope it's been thought-provoking. I hope that I have given you plenty to mull over and to think about. And, you know, I just want to figure things out myself. I mean, I have my own opinions and stuff, but that doesn't mean that I'm the only one who's right. I might get a little animated sometimes when I'm talking about how, you know, how it's just, some things are just common sense to me. And it's just some things, when I hear things that seem to war against common sense and I'm being painted out to be this extreme, crazy, you know, out there fringe dude for thinking this way, it's like, oh, come on, guys, you can't be serious. You can do better than that. I don't know. I think I'm meandering now. I think I'm just kind of babbling. So thank you for joining me, if you have in fact watched this, and I encourage you, give me some feedback. I mean, hell, like I said, I probably will do another one later on today or tomorrow, and anyone who wants to hop on with me to talk live can do that. Anyone who wants to give me some things to address in the what do you call it, the comments on the event page or whatever, I'll check on those later, and you know, we can hash this out and talk about it, because I'll tell you what, I'm not a racist. I think everyone has a certain level of prejudice. I'm not a racist, and I'm not anti-Muslim. I am anti-Islam, very much. I am anti-Muhammad. I'm very anti-Muhammadism. I'm anti-Islam, and I'm anti-Quran. But I'm not anti-Muslim, and I'm certainly not anti-Syrian. I just think we can be smarter than that. So anyway, I'm really going to shut up now. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. I hope this is a great way for you to start your day. And until the next time, have a great freaking day.